Good day and welcome to Massage Matters. I'm your host, Chris O'Connor. Massage Matters is designed to give you a hands-on look at the various manual therapies that are available to help you heal your mind, body, and spirit. Massage Matters strives to raise the awareness of these therapies within our community. My hope is that by explaining and demonstrating them, those of you watching will put them to use, encouraging you to become more involved with your health care. Each week features a specific technique, and in some cases we're going to bring in an expert on board to teach us what we need to know. Some of these therapies you may be familiar with, but I'm sure there are some that will be completely new to you. After we've demonstrated these techniques, you'll be better equipped to decide which treatment might be best for you. Today's show will be all about osteopathy. We have in the studio my special guest, Michael Brewster. Michael's an osteopathic practitioner, and he's going to tell us all about osteopathy. A little later on, we'll be at the table with Michael, and he'll take us through what a typical osteopathic assessment and treatment might look like. We'll go over some of the reasons people see an osteopath and specific conditions they might get treated. I'm ready, and I hope you are too, so let's get started. Welcome to the show, Michael. I'm glad that you could be here today.
Thank you very much, Chris.
All right. Well, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your professional background?
Well, all my working life, I've dedicated myself to helping others. I knew at a very young age this would be a good fit for me. Ironically enough, I also wanted to work with my hands.
Yes.
So during high school, I worked on my shop teacher's farm. I also spent a summer building silos. So it was a very physical job, and I enjoyed it a lot. Nice. My first professional job, though, was as a social worker.
Right.
I worked in group homes with youth, troubled youth, and wards of the Crown.
Right.
And I saw this as a natural fit towards helping people in that capacity.
Nice. Right on. So was there anything in particular that got you really interested in becoming a manual practitioner? You said you worked with people and liked helping them, but was there...
Well, I did a program called Katimivic,
right.
And that was in the mid-'80s. And this is a volunteer program that takes you across the country to 9 different towns or cities, and you do volunteer work while you're in the town. But also, on your off time, you're required to do some workshops. And I was lucky enough to have some of the workshops be centered around the healing arts. So in one town, we had a weekend workshop on shiatsu. We also did massage therapy. And while I was in Manitoba, we also learned reflexology from Mennonites.
Wow.
So that was an excellent introduction for me into the manual healing arts.
Wow, yeah, that must have been a pretty interesting little journey.
It was a great journey, and I really, it got me an opportunity at a young age to see Canada, get out of my hometown, which is always a good idea, I think.
Yeah.
But it was just by chance that those workshops were centered around the healing arts, and they really planted a seed, and I used those techniques for the next 10 years or so, and had no problem finding people lining up to get a shoulder rub or shiatsu treatment, and I knew I was onto something.
Right on. So can you just give us a little bit of history about osteopathy? I know lots of people, it's sort of it's a word that's in the community, and there's lots of people now talking about osteopathy, and they're not really sure exactly what it is or sort of where it came from.
Well, osteopathy has been around since the 1800s. Andrew Still, who was an MD at the time, realized that there was a way of treating people different than what he was used to as an MD. And this involved using his hands to correct anatomical dysfunction. So he drew from a number of things in the past. There were certain techniques that were Cherokee, and he realized that there was a big relationship with living anatomy and disease. And he felt that if he could correct the dysfunction physiologically, that healing would follow. And he proved that to be true by treating people with his hands on a regular basis and getting fairly immediate results without prescriptions or drugs.
All right. So in the beginning, I guess he called it osteopathy because he thought maybe that the bones were more involved than anything else?
That's true. He felt that he could find difficulty or dysfunction with the skeletal system. But osteopathy has evolved. That's one of the benefits of it, based on its tenets. And it has evolved now to encompass all of the body. It's a very holistic approach. It looks at the nerves, the muscles, the viscera, the fascia, and so on.
Right on. What's I going to ask you? What is it about this modality that really sort of piqued your interest? You're a massage therapist, originally by that's sort of your umbrella trade. But what was it about osteopathy that sort of sort of grabbed you?
Well, again, it was a stroke of luck that some of the instructors at the college that I went to for massage therapy were enrolled in the osteopathic program. And on those special days when they threw the lesson plan out the window, they would show us some of the things that they'd learned. And right away I was fascinated by the difference in the techniques, but also very intrigued by the philosophy. For me, osteopathy has a lot to do with the philosophy and the approach to healing.
All right. And you mentioned something about the tenets of osteopathy. I have a bit of background in it. There's certain sort of procedure that you follow when you're doing treatment, like sort of where you get your mindset?
That's right, and that's what the philosophy is based on. So the first one is that the body is a unit, and you can't separate one from the other. Right. And that includes emotions and spirit. Also, structure and function are interrelated. You can't separate those as well. The last one talks about reasoned treatment is based on taking those principles and applying them to the body that you're working on.
Nice, nice. What kind of conditions would you sort of treat normally with osteopathic?
I've had in my 15 years of treating people, I've had a very wide range, and I appreciate the challenges of that. I mean, I've got your frequent flyers, you know, your headache, repetitive strain. Yeah. But I've also treated the Toronto Maple Leafs for concussion with some osteopathic techniques. I have clients that have ALS and MS. So it's a very wide range of pathologies.
All right. So is there something, what's the biggest difference if I were to come to you for a massage treatment versus an osteopathic treatment? What might be one of the main differences that would happen?
I think that one of the main differences is that you can be treated with your clothes on. Some people are more comfortable with that. That's probably the main difference, but I really feel that, again, it boils down to the philosophy and the approach at the onset of the treatment. It's a way of thinking, and osteopathy, in my view, has been able to bring resolution to dysfunction where other modalities have failed.
All right, excellent. Okay, well, coming up after the break, Michael's going to take us through some assessment and treatment that he might perform when we're at the table. So I hope you stay tuned to us right here on Massage Matters on Community Connection, only on Rogers TV. All right, we're back and we're at the table with osteopathic practitioner Michael Brewster. I want to welcome our guest demo, Kate. She's face down, so she'll say hi later. All right, Michael, yes, take us through what you might typically do as far as an assessment and maybe a treatment for osteopathy, if you will.
Well, obviously it would make sense to start off with an assessment. Usually clients will come in with a particular complaint. You'd like to take their information and then try and find out for yourself where you think that issue may be stemming from. There are two osteopathic physicians, Zink and Lawson, who came up with a way of assessing compensatory changes in the body.
Right.
The body will compensate naturally. What osteopaths are concerned with is uncommon compensatory patterns. Now here we have a skeleton that can demonstrate some of the uncommon compensatory changes that could result in not being well or dysfunction down the road.
Okay.
You can see the hips are slightly deviated to the skeleton's right, as are the shoulders, and yet the head is deviating to the left. So if I was to assess Kate before a treatment, these are the types of patterns I would be looking for.
Right.
Obviously what you want to have is you want to have a straight spine, relatively squared shoulders and squared hips. These problems can arise from birth issues genetically, or they can be something that you've acquired over time, either from injuries or carrying children around on your hips, young children, or even ergonomic issues at work.
Right.
So these are the patterns that I try to see, and then I would determine my treatment based on what I find.
Right, so some of these things you might find on somebody have been there since birth. For instance, they might actually have a bone that's actually shorter from one side to the other, where other things might be because of the way somebody's sitting at work, the way they drive in their car, the way they're sitting.
The way they sleep. There's a number of different reasons that you can acquire these uncommon compensatory patterns. But if you were born with a femur that was shorter on one side, that's obviously going to drop the hips down on that side. And then that's going to have to be compensated for somewhere else up the body.
Okay.
So we like to try and determine where the issues are stemming from first before treatment.
Right, excellent. Okay, so if you found something similar like this, what might you do here for Kate?
Well, as we talked about earlier, one of the tenets of osteopathy is to be concerned with the whole body. It's a very holistic approach. But in the interest of the time that we have here, I would have already assessed Kate and determined that she's having a problem with the hips, and therefore I would be interested in treating the lower extremities, but also I'd be interested in treating the thoracic region as well.
Right, excellent.
So I also would do assessment while she's on the table, so I would check range of motion and flexibility, the range of motion of her hips, the flexibility of her quadriceps or her thigh in the front, and you typically would do both sides just to make sure that things are in balance or equal.
And a lot of what you're doing is very gentle. Sometimes when people go for assessments at a physiotherapist or massage therapist, sometimes it's a little more vigorous, but I see you're kind of being a bit more sort of gentle with what you're doing.
Osteopathy has a wide variance in treatment modalities, and a lot of them are quite gentle. Right now I'm assessing Kate's hips, and also the bone that rests between the hips, the sacrum, and I'm checking for mobility of the sacrum right now and seeing if there's any deviation from side to side.
Now, would Kate typically experience any sort of pain or discomfort when you're doing that, or she should sort of feel?
The gentler techniques, sometimes they feel very little, but there are some deeper techniques that revolve around releasing trigger points, and trigger points can generally take a little more pressure to resolve that. And we always establish a tolerance for Kate, and that's always my first priority, never to exceed her tolerances for pain threshold.
Excellent.
So now what I'm doing is I'm assessing for trigger points in the lower lumbar region. These muscles are commonly known as the QLs. And if it's tight on one side and not as tight on the other, that again can cause a deviation of the hips.
Right.
So that would be more of a functional deviation rather than a structural or genetic deviation.
Right.
So generally, I start off with some myofascial treatment. The fascia is similar to the skin of a sausage or the transparent layer of skin on a chicken breast, say. But it can get tight and shortened, the same as muscles. So this is a very gentle technique that is meant to stretch out the fascia.
I mentioned on our show with massage, we mentioned about tensegrity and how the fascia has the ability to help us compensate, and that this is something that you might be looking for as a sort of like a diagnostic tool, perhaps, where you're able to find areas maybe that Kate might not even know that she's sore, for instance, but you can feel it that there's definitely a restriction. That's
very true. One thing about osteopaths is you'll find when you go to get a treatment, they generally will be treating and assessing simultaneously. And so that's what I'm doing right now. I'm feeling for different changes in tissue, side to side.
Right. So once you find an area, typically you're going to work above, below, you keep kind of just moving around. Right. You work not only on the back, but you also work on the front of the body.
That's true. Again, osteopaths are very holistic. So you can have issues with an ankle that will translate all the way up to the jaw. So you really have to, you can't, in an osteopathic perspective or approach, if someone's having a problem with the wrist, you just don't treat the wrist. You'd look at the shoulder and the mid back and lower back as well.
Right, okay.
So now I'm just increasing her flexibility on her quads. The quads have a big relationship with the hips.
Okay.
The hip flexors eventually will attach to the lumbar spine, but from the front. There is a thing called psoas syndrome.
Right.
And the psoas muscle attaches to the lumbar spine but from the front. So I can try to get a stretch this way. If I feel like I'm not getting enough, I could take Kate's leg up a little bit and exaggerate the stretch. This tends to target the psoas more.
Mm-hmm.
And again, big relationship over or on hips that are deviated one side to the other or front to back. Is that pressure okay, Kate?
Yeah.
I generally check in with my clients numerous times during the treatment just to make sure that they're comfortable. Now that range of motion is fine in that particular direction. This one as well.
Mm-hmm. So if you're going to do some stuff for the front of the body, you'd typically what areas you're going to be targeting?
Well, maybe we'll have Kate slide down and flip over onto your back if you would, Kate. So again, I'm interested in the hips.
Okay.
I would assess the hips, and I would also assess just a general range of motion here in a number of different planes. This is targeting more the back of the thigh or the hamstring, and if it's tight, again, it has a big relationship over the hips. So I would assess the hamstrings, and I can also, it's a very sensitive area to work on, but I can actually access the psoas muscle, which is deep into the hip,
okay,
from this position as well. We could do some muscle energy techniques where I could take Kate's leg up to a stretch position, and then I would ask Kate to just gently push down with this leg, resist what I'm doing for about 3 to 5 seconds.
Okay.
And then once that is done, she relaxes again, and I'm able to get a little bit more of a stretch. So we're working again with the nervous system in that regard as well.
Nice.
We got a little bit more there.
And again, you're always working with making sure that she's not feeling too much pain when you're doing that sort of thing.
Exactly right.
Okay.
So, I could also do some myofascial release on this quadricep if it's over tightened. Now we're lucky that Kate does yoga on a regular basis, so I'm not really finding a whole lot with Kate, but if someone is having a problem with a tight quadricep, I would be interested in doing some myofascial release. And it's very gentle, and you wait as you're doing it to feel it slowly, we call it creep, but it slowly starts to go in the direction that you're wanting it to go, but it's a very gentle touch.
So what would Kate expect to feel like after the treatment? What would you expect her to feel like after it's all done?
Ultimately, what we're hoping that Kate's going to find after the treatment is some relief from the initial complaint that she came in with. So if she was having a lower back issue or perhaps some sciatic type syndrome pain down the leg, in the first treatment, if we're lucky, the symptoms will be resolved.
All right. Okay, so we're going to go to commercial, but coming up after the break, I'm going to take you through some stretches for your piriformis muscle. So stay tuned to Massage Matters on Community Connection, right here on Rogers TV. One area of the body that can cause pain and discomfort is the piriformis muscle. This muscle can oftentimes cause hip pain, and due to its relationship with the sciatic nerve, can even mimic sciatica. One of the simplest ways to stretch this muscle is by laying on your back here, as Kate's doing. And what you're going to do is just very gently bring your knee up towards, in this case she's got her right knee, so it's going to be coming up towards her right shoulder here. And what you want to do is you just want to pull until, you just want to bring your knee up until you feel a pull. Now, your piriformis muscle runs in this area of the body here. It runs from your sacroiliac joint out to the top part of your leg bone, your femur here, okay? Now you can hold this position for 30 or 45 seconds. And what you really want to do is just, anytime you're doing a stretch, it's just go until you feel a pull and then wait. And what you want to do is just hold it there until you don't feel a pull anymore, and then you can take it a little bit further. All right. What you can do to modify this stretch, and as long as it's okay with your knees and your hips, is you can do, I call it the figure 4. And what Kate's going to do is she's going to bring her ankle is just just above her knee here. And what I'm going to get her to do is just bring her knee up like she's going to do a sit-up. Okay? And now what you can see is this puts a bit of an exaggerated stretch. This might be a little more advanced, so always make sure that if your knee, either of your knees or your hips are feeling any pain, don't move to this one. Do the first one I showed you there. All right? Now, again, this is just holding it right there. She can bring it up a little bit further, and that really gives a good stretch, okay? I always want you to remember that if you're experiencing any pain, I need you to stop immediately. You should always feel a stretch, but not pain. Always consult with a health professional before you attempt to make a dramatic shift in your activity level. And always take it easy when you're starting a stretching routine. This will help avoid injury and make sure that the effects are long-lasting. Namaste. Namaste is a truly powerful word. Maybe you've heard it before, or maybe you haven't. Many people who have taken a yoga class have probably heard it before. But for those of you who have never heard it before, let me introduce you to this wonderful word. Albert Einstein learned about this word after watching newsreels of Mahatma Gandhi bowing his head with his hands clasped together in the streets of India. Einstein was interested, so he wrote to Gandhi asking him, "What were you saying?" Gandhi wrote back. He said, "I'm saying Namaste. It means I honor the place in you where the entire universe resides. I honor the place in you of light, love, truth, peace, and wisdom." That's a whole lot for just one word. I had never really known what Namaste meant until I picked up this book. It's written by Kevin Hall and it's called Aspire, Discovering Your Purpose Through the Power of Words. In this book, Kevin shares his love of words. In this case, 11 words that have helped transform his life. It's not just a dictionary, it's a journey. He uses his personal experiences on how he learned these words to teach us just how powerful they can be. What kind of changes would be possible in the world if you increased your vocabulary? Communication through words is one of the most powerful tools we have at our disposal. Think about how you felt when you first heard a great speech for the first time. Maybe a speech by Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. or a famous politician like John F. Kennedy might come to mind. Just one word can transform your day, your week, your entire life. Now, to some of you that may sound a bit odd, but think about it for a minute. There are certain words that when you hear them, you make an instant picture in your mind, or the word can instantly change your mood. If I say church or school, you readily see these two places without even closing your eyes. If we were swimming in the ocean having a good time and someone yelled, "Shark!" you can see how your mood would shift in a heartbeat, even if the person was just joking. How many times have you wished you could take back the words you just spoke? How many times have you wished you had spoke but said nothing? Words are very powerful, and if we aren't careful of how we use them, we can create many problems in our lives. What I'm going to suggest to you this week is go out and find a copy of this book. It's easy to find online or in bookstores, and I'm pretty sure that your local library should have a copy or two. Everyone can find something useful in this book. Kevin's passion for words is contagious. Do yourself the favor and let Aspire inspire you. It's a great book and a great way for you to massage your mind. Well, that's all there is for today's show. I want to thank my guests today, Michael Brewster and our guest demo, Kate. It was wonderful to have them here. If you'd like to find out more about Michael and the services he's offering, you can contact him at keepintouch@simpatico.ca. I want to thank all the volunteers here at Rogers who have helped make the show possible, and I want to thank you for watching. I hope you learned something new. I also hope you'll take the time to give us some feedback about today's show by emailing your comments to massagematters@rogers.com. If you'd like to find out more about osteopathy, you can go to the Osteopathic College of Ontario website at www.o-c-o.org. Please join me for our next episode of Massage Matters, which will feature my special guest, Lori Kanar. She'll be introducing us to craniosacral therapy. I'm looking forward to it and hope you are too. You've been watching Massage Matters on Community Connection, only on Rogers TV. We'll see you next time.